The Colonel Fuller was a fly from John Shields, late 1800s, a brook trout fly then. And this version is the one found in Ray Bergman's trout. Again, I'm sure he caught many brook trout with this gorgeous fly. It's a lot of fun to tie, and I hope you give it a shot. Start the thread behind the eye and take it all the way back to the bend. I'm using Benecke 12-aught. Anything will work. Any light colored thread. Dark colored thread won't work under the yellow floss. It'll change the color of the floss when the fly gets wet. So be aware of that. Tying in flat gold tinsel on the far side of the hook. Binding it down, and then I'm going to take 5 wraps back down the shank. And if you notice, I'm angling those wraps so that the tinsel slides back off of the tinsel that was wrapped before it. And on the way back, I'm letting the tinsel slide off the tinsel that was wrapped before it. And that enables you, even though it's difficult to see this is fine tinsel, so it's difficult to see the wraps, but you kind of do this by feel. And you'll get a feel for how these tags work. At least at my age, that's how I do them. I do them by feel. I can't see them anymore. I've sped up a lot of the winding back and forth on this video. It's all designed to build up an underbody. Here I've got slips from left and right goose quills, dyed black goose quills. I'm going to straddle the hook with them. They're about 4 strands or so wide each. One's from the left, a left quill, and one's from a right. Put them tips together. And we're just going to straddle the very top of this hook and make a little tent, as you can see here. Bind down all the way. At least I like to bind down all the way forward. It gives me more bulk underneath the body. And these wet fly bodies typically were wider in the middle, were thicker in the middle, and at each end tapered down. So as I tie this fly, I'll be trying to accomplish that with flattened thread. Now I'm tying the rib material in, which is also flat gold tinsel, on the far side of the hook again. The whole idea of tying it in on the far side of the hook is when it's wrapped, it will appear to come out of the bottom of the fly. It's a great way to start your tinsel. And now I'm tying in a single strand of Danville 4-strand floss, but just 1 strand. You can do 2 strands as well. I think Don Bastian uses 2, and that works great as well. Whatever you're comfortable doing. Right here, I'm occasionally spinning the bobbin counterclockwise to flatten the thread. It's like unscrewing a light bulb, as if you're going to change out a light bulb and you're unscrewing it. That's how you twist the bobbin. And you'll get to a flattened section of thread. You'll get it to where you can see that the thread is flat. If you go too far, the thread will start to twist up again, and it won't be flat anymore. So you've kind of got to watch it. And periodically, as you're winding, flatten it. Now I'm going to wrap the floss slightly overlapping. It's almost edge to edge, but not quite. That way you don't get any gaps. And if you see the floss start to widen too much, like right here, it's gotten too wide, back it off a turn or so, and then twist it up just a little bit, and go again. It's less critical up towards the front of the fly because you're going to have hackle there, and it really doesn't matter. You never see it up there. Bind it down. Maybe trap it a couple of times. Cut the butts. Wind the rib. Traditionally, in this country anyway, 5 turns showing of rib showing was the norm. It wasn't always 5 ribs. There were plenty of flies not done that way. But it was kind of a traditional thing. I wind 6 because the 6th one never shows, and that way I can keep my head area short. And that promotes the look of the head I like, which is sort of a stubby, bullet-shaped head. I always say I kind of crowd the eye on my wet flies, and in reality I do. Tie in a hackle, and I typically, I've already prepped this hackle, and it's from the tie-in point, the strands will reach about to the hook point. And that's not a rule. None of this stuff is, none of these things, the 5 turns of ribbing is not written down anywhere. It's just kind of the way it was done. I'm going to use hackle pliers. A lot of times when I wrap hackle, I don't like to use hackle pliers. But this is kind of a short feather, so I'm going to go ahead and put hackle pliers on it. And I have nothing against hackle pliers for winding hackle, certainly. It's just, it's one more thing you got to try to find on your tying table. And on this fly, it's worked out the way I like for exactly 4 turns of hackle. And 4 turns is my ideal on a wet fly. But 3's fine, 5's fine. Somewhere in that vicinity. You notice I'm holding the butts forward as I bind down the hackle. That way, when I cut it off, I don't have a lot of strays left typically. Let's see what I wind up with here. Well, there's at least one stray. I'll just pluck it out with tweezers. When you pluck a stray out with tweezers, be sure to hold the thread under tension as you do it. And now I'm going to switch over to black thread. Black thread's another, black heads on these flies, another tradition. And I think some of these traditions just come from the old books. All the flies in Bergman's trout, or the vast majority of them, have black heads. And people just tied them that way once the book was out. I just overwrap and take at least 4 turns of black thread, starting at the eye, and just wrap backwards right over the other thread, and then trim out the thread butts. Pulling the hackle down into a beard here, and I didn't quite get the far hackle, but so I'm gonna redo it. It's a little better. I don't want this hackle sticking up in the way of the wing I'm going to mount. It just makes it harder to mount. This is a married wing, and marrying a wing is about the simplest thing you can ever think of doing in fly tying. So don't get one of these metal blocks that I've seen some very good tyers get where married wings are concerned. The only thing you have to think about is, if you notice here, I'm cutting these slips from the lefts, from the feathers where the longest strands are on the left side of the feather as I look at the feather from the front. Lefts marry to lefts and rights marry to rights. Lefts will never marry to rights, and vice versa. So make sure that you're just dealing with the left feathers when you want to marry the in this case, the far wing. And then when you want to marry the near wing, make sure you're just dealing with rights. And you saw a little time that took. You're just basically trying to keep the tips aligned and put the edges together, and just keep manipulating it until they go together. Now, this is actually a right feather. We're looking at it from behind, and there's a bad section there that I need to strip out. And I'm going to cut a couple slips here. The width of these slips isn't critical. Ideally, on the finished wing, I like the in this case the yellow sections to maybe be 6 to 8 strands. The red stripe may be less than that. Maybe 4 to 6 strands. I can see already I've cut these slips a little wider than they should be. I'll deal with that here in a minute. It's easily fixed. Very difficult for me at my age to see 6 or 8 strands, or is it 6 or is it 10? I don't know. And I'll just cut them wide and strip out what I don't need. Strip out just 1 or 2 fibers at a time, 2 at the most. It's surprising what a difference stripping out 1 fiber will make in the look of the wing. And here are the two married slips that would make up the wing. We'll put them together here and make sure that the width is about the same on each. These wings are actually a little wider than the ones I just made up. On a demo fly or a show fly, it's kind of fun to do a nice wide wing. Challenge yourself just a little bit. And if you're trying to prep to do full dress salmon flies, this is great practice. Put a good wide wing on it. Pulling up on the bobbin here. I've got one loop around the slips, holding both the butts and the wing itself in each hand. That way, thread torque doesn't affect anything, and your odds of getting a good, see how dead on this wing is? Your odds of getting a nice wing set are very much enhanced if you grab both the butts and the wing while you're tightening the thread. That way it just can't move. Thread torque cannot affect it. Cut the butts off as close as you can. Missed a little here. And then starting at the eye, just wrap up the head as aggressively and as forcefully as you can without breaking the thread. Take the thread right to the breaking point and never let go with the left hand. And this whip finish should work out to be a 5 or 6 turn whip finish, which is ideal. Going to do another one because there's still some areas that don't quite have coverage of the black. The yellow's showing through a little bit. And cut the thread while it's under tension with a single blade of your scissors. And we're done. Let's glue it up and have a look. These old brook trout flies aren't fished much anymore because the brook trout are largely gone. But they're fun to tie, they're beautiful, and I just have a ball with them.